Cool.
Because to it relationship with you has been driving me deeper into the consideration of the Imago Dei. I wonder why, huh?
No, that's cool.
You know, but definitely I think that we have skipped over the significance because we have been so defensive with Darwin. And it's interesting, even, I mean, Darwin was a man of faith. At least the articles I've read say he was.
Yeah, I think that he, I mean, a lot of his findings gave him quite a faith hiccup. And there's a story that apparently is flawed. It's a story I grew up with that he recanted on his deathbed. But apparently that's not true. But I don't think he ever really hung up his cross. I think he was a man of deep conflict by all accounts. His children certainly seem to have adopted a lot of anger and projected it backwards. But I don't read a lot in Darwin or of his contemporaries that seem to paint him as somehow adversarial, more troubled. Like, what does this mean if this is true? What the heck? You know?
Well, and wouldn't that be the right response? We should be troubled.
Yeah.
Okay. But as you stated, it's not because we don't know enough science, it's because we don't know enough Bible.
Yeah.
And that, as people of faith, should be driving us towards our Bible.
Right.
And I mean, that's one of the things I enjoyed so much about today.
Yeah, well, I feel deeply about that. Like, you know, I'm never going to learn enough about science to talk articulately about science. I'm just not wired for that. I'm not sciencey. But I am Bible-y, and the Bible makes lots of sense to me on this issue. So I kind of feel like I wish more pastors were doing that. Dive deep into the scriptures. Find out what's really going on in the Bible. Don't worry yourself about molecules and stardust. And
I definitely don't want to dominate this conversation, but I've got a question.
Go ahead.
All right, in the light of what you said today, what's the significance of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I mean, I go back and forth a lot, actually. One of the reasons we stopped at Genesis 2, and actually Sheree and I were talking about this a week ago or 2 weeks ago, is that there's a lot of, there's a lot of both and to it. Like, for example, you know, the question is, you know, is this account in Eden, after creation, is the account in Eden meant to be taken literally? Is the account of the fall meant to be taken literally or not, or figuratively? And I go back and forth. Really, I can buy into it being a literal account as the first people to whom God revealed himself personally and specifically. I can buy into that. I can buy into there being two literal trees. I don't have a problem with that. The other part of me that goes, it still sounds so mythic that if somebody told me, if I found out when I got to heaven that it was all, you know, figurative language, I think I'd be okay too.
But
you mean what it means? Never mind whether or not it's literal.
Even if God constructed the tree to send us a message in
Right.
the 21st century, and
Right.
it was real, and it was really had some wood and some fruit, there is something far more meaningful to it. Or at least, if I understood what you were talking about today, that would seem to be true.
Yeah, I think just symbolically, leaving the issue of literal or figurative aside,
Right.
Symbolically, I think that the tree of knowledge represents our desire to be something more than shadows. It represents our desire to be God, or be gods, or be alternate gods, instead of being subservient to God. And this is a big concern for me, actually, as we talk about the Imago Dei. Many of my peers who are on a similar train are very are spooky, new agey about it. And they spin it out as being we're all gods, small g gods. And we're not. We are not gods. We are not close to gods. That's New Age baloney. That's not biblical Christian spirituality. Our spirituality is we are not him, but we're not nothing either. We are his servants, his shadows made to imitate him. And I think the world paints us as worthless, and false religion paints us as equivalent to God. And I think ultimately eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is a concession to wanting to be like God. That's what the serpent said. Eat this and you'll be like God. You'll know what God knows. You'll be what God is. And that was the temptation, to be like God. And context of our world, there are many of us who are trying to eat from that tree now. We want to be like God because we know so much about science, or, I mean, sure, many people talk about a God complex among surgeons or geneticists or people who are involved in nanotechnology and robotics, and because if they can create life, or if they can create intelligence, or if they can create, cognition, then they'll be God. That's not to say that necessarily their research is unethical, but for many people, that engine that drives them to be God instead of simply being like God is problematic, and is the root of sin. So,
I just want to say thank
Hey,
you
Jan.
for reaffirming something I knew. I felt a long time ago. I went to so-called, it is Christian college, and Cedarville. Everybody knows Cedarville College, and in Cedarville, Ohio. And during my couple years there, they were trying to make the professors sign a literal, you must believe in the literal 6-day creation. And unfortunately lost many good professors. And one science professor was a wonderful teacher. And he said in class, because of my studies and my findings, I can't sign something that says a literal 6-day creation. And I thought at the time, being 18, 19, 20, how can we say we know how God did it and when God did it? Isn't it enough that we believe He did it? And I've gone through all these years feeling that and thinking that. And I must say thank you. Thank you for reaffirming that.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. I feel the same way. I go, Jesus, I love you with everything I have, and I want to give you everything I've got and everything that I ever get. But it just feels like we're taking this thing out of its appropriate place. And the appropriate place is, it's Him, not us. And it's this for Him, and with Him, and us for Him, and with Him, and us with this, and us with one another. That seems like what it's about. To make all this hullabaloo by dating the Bible backwards, to add up all the years to see how old it is, seems to me ridiculous. Ridiculous. We don't even make that big a deal about how old Moses is.
People's desire to nitpick. Well, I have to know this. It's more important to know this than to know that God loves us, maybe. I don't know. But it's always felt wrong to me when people were having to do that sort of thing. It's more important to believe He did it. More important to know that He created the world, created us, than to know how. And is it really for us to know how He did it?
Walter Brueggemann's a famous theologian from Columbia University, as famous as theologians get. It's not like anybody's running out to get his autograph. But he says that in many ways, something like this, or like the battle for homosexuality or abortion or whatever, that many of these things are really just this representative of how Christians in America are feeling. And the way we're feeling is that our country has been taken away from us, that others are stealing America, and it's no longer the Christian country that it once was. And he says, so basically, we get all worked up about abortion or homosexuality or creationism, not even because in and of themselves they're big deals, but because they're representative of the fact that we feel like others are robbing our security and our country from us. And perhaps my perspective is slightly different coming from a country where, the faith perspective has changed, right? But I kind of feel like we've already lost Christian America, and maybe even for the better, because many perversions of faith came out of Christian America or Christian Canada or whatever. And we're a church in exile, and you live differently in exile. And nitpicking over these things seems to me foolish. We ought to take our cue from the prophets and from Jesus, who Himself lived in exile, and learn how to live provocatively in this world rather than defensively. Well, we ought to be sticking it to the man, not having the man pick us apart like a vulture. So thanks to Walt. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to need to just catch my breath here before Fusion, but thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.